instance, with Vusi Matlala's voice notes, those voice notes were recorded and they are not material to the charges that he's facing. So you would not be able to bring them into a court process where he's accused of attempted murder and fraud, etc. They are more related to the issues of the cartel and his relationships, improper relationships with various police officers, right? But they still exist. They're still necessary information. And as such, they may be admissible within the context of the commission. There is this intersection between private security companies and drug trade. And you'll find here that one of the guys, or some of the guys who ended up killing Brett Kebble, were actually in a private security company, right? That's how people access guns legally, and that's how they then create this cabal, which can then work in terms of enforcement and intimidation, but under a legal guide.
Point of bringing up Paulo Sullivan.
Yes.
Because I think one of the main things that everyone has been asking, he's been platformed quite a bit.
Yes.
In making comments around Nkwazi, around the processes, and then obviously as someone who, when Kambide was testifying, and then he comes and says, "I've received an SMS threatening," but I mean that has been his nature in the past few years. I think even in the Portfolio Committee on Police in 2018 received threatening messages from Paul Sullivan again when they were investigating a particular matter. So, but everyone keeps asking, who is he?
Yes.
And why does he have so much power? Hello everyone, my name is Hanguani Mulaudzi and I'm welcoming you to this episode of the EFF podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a very, very special guest today here with us. We have Mighty Jamie, a YouTuber, political analyst, political commentator, debating champion, and we're here to just do an update on the goings on of the Matlala Commission and the ad hoc committee, especially as a political analyst. He's been following it very acutely and providing daily updates and several interviews around the allegations made by General Nkwazi earlier this year. So we're very excited to have him and dig into the recent goings on in the investigations. Welcome, Jamie. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Welcome back to the EFF studios.
No, and the studio is looking nice, yeah?
Yes, okay.
But now Trump will be looking, saying, this guy is also...
Yes, they must know. So we are in the thick of things. South Africa is currently a movie, a thriller, a comedy, espionage, many things at the same time. We have been watching the ad hoc committee. We have been following the Matlala Commission. There have been many testimonies going, over the past couple of months. And I would like to know, you have been following this very, very acutely, and you give people a breakdown of everything that's going on. You follow it, you analyze it. I want to know from you, from between the Matlala Commission and the ad hoc committee, what are some of the stark differences you've noticed about what is being conducted and what has come out so far, and whether these are relevant to the outcomes we should be expecting?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that has been a stark difference for me is the way that the evidence is led. Let's start there. So with the Matlala Commission, it's almost, and not so much with the implicated persons because of time constraints, but with some of the main witnesses, you were actually going through paragraph by paragraph of key parts of their testimony. So even if you didn't have the statement on your side, you would be able to actually understand this person's version, this person's evidence. And the fact that they have that annexed file is also very important because
they're working in tandem with what is being said and the file.
Every claim has to be corroborated in real time. And you could see at the beginning, it was very important for the commissioners to painstakingly understand, where did you get these text messages from? Where did you get these videos from? Where did you get this particular type of information from? That was something that I thought was important, even for the broader public to understand that this evidence has met the criteria for, us to accept that it is credible evidence, right? There are some issues around admissibility, which I don't think have been fully ventilated. But in a court, for instance, sometimes improperly obtained evidence would be cast out.
Yes, it would be
And
inadmissible. Yeah.
yes, and what we are seeing is that there are some people claiming that certain evidence is not admissible on the basis of how it was necessarily obtained. I'm not sure that those arguments are entirely going to hold up because, for instance, with Vusi Matlala's voice notes, those voice notes were recorded and they are not material to the charges that he's facing. So you would not be able to bring them into a court process where he's accused of attempted murder and fraud, etc. They are more related to the issues of the cartel and his relationships, improper relationships with various police officers, right? But they still exist. They're still necessary information. And as such, they may be admissible within the context of the commission, whereas they may be inadmissible within the context
of a court of law,
of a criminal proceeding. And those are interesting dynamics I don't think have been fully explored. Some people may claim that they were under duress when they made particular admissions and concessions to members of the South African Police Service or the PKTT or the GCI Ops, which is why they often say they came wearing balaclavas, they were carrying these heavy guns, etc. So maybe there's an argument they want to make around it's not admissible because I was intimidated, or these are coerced confessions, something to that effect. I don't know if that's where they're going to go, but some people are trying everything to deny, one, whether that evidence is authentic, whether it has been manipulated or not, or whether it's even themselves.
Also, because evidence also requires a chain of custody,
yes,
right? For it to be admissible or to be recognized. So
yes.
It's like, where does the information come from?
Yes.
Might also be a very important factor in trying to consider whether this evidence is...
Exactly. But I think what we've seen from the commission is that the evidence which has been presented has had a very clear chain of custody. Okay. The nature of the General Kumalo presentation and the people around him has been meticulous. Their methodology seems to be that they are detail-oriented, they are nitpickers, and I don't think that they will be found to have been in a flagrant position in terms of chain of custody or anything to that effect. What, if you recall, witness A, B, C were very careful at different times to create a paper trail of allegations that or concerns that they had and make sure that they could back up many of the things that they were saying. So I don't think we'll have those issues. But I appreciated the, sequential testimony leading, as well as the fact that we have these annexes that are then being presented to the public so that we can then see the proof of the pudding, if you will.
At the same time as the testimony being provided.
Exactly. Yes. Now, when you go to the ad hoc committee, the evidence leading was not the same. So you would typically get the same, tell us about your background, etc. But then there was jumping around in terms of parts of the statement that either the evidence leader wanted to focus on, as well as questions from other statements, which they wanted to test the version that is going to come from the witness who is presenting. So if you did not have the statement with you, you then would not know what is the full evidence or statement or testimony that this particular witness has presented to the ad hoc committee, if that makes any sense. And it makes some of those testimonies much harder to follow. Like, for instance, if you think about General Shadrack Sibiya, can you genuinely say you have a full grasp of everything that is in his statement based on the way that the evidence was led and the questions that were put to him?
Yeah.
So juicy questions were put to him, elements of his affidavit were challenged, but do we genuinely say that we have a full version of his affidavit? I don't think we do. And I think that is perhaps the discrepancy between the two. And I would have appreciated if, they were going to go, not sequentially, but pick highlights that they wanted to focus on because of the time constraints in the ad hoc committee to then make the affidavit public.
Yes.
And perhaps they can still do that and build a website or attach a link to that ad hoc committee, link a sublink, whatever, to the website, because there's a lot of information on the Parliament website as it is, to say, here are all the statements that were submitted
Yes.
to the ad hoc committee. I don't think any of those things need to be confidential, and anything that is confidential can be redacted. And I think that would then help people to go back
and be able to really then engage with what the statement presented.
The full body of the statement and the full argument
Yes.
that was being presented by that particular witness. I think that's where the discrepancy.
So it's a bit difficult, more difficult to follow the ad hoc committee in terms of understanding the direction of the inquiry at this point in time.
Not necessarily. You can see the strategic line. You can see the relevance of particular witnesses. But what then becomes difficult, not difficult, but sometimes challenging to fully appreciate is what is the body in terms of the fullness of this witness's version? What are they actually going to be weighing outside of the stuff that was brought up in questions?
Yes.
And because everyone has limited time, they're not like, the types of questions that you would get in the ad hoc committee where you have the same evidence leaders who are then going through without some of the pressures of time.
So there's a more linear approach happening in the Matlanga than in the ad hoc committee. Also because, it's different political parties, it's different kinds of lines of questioning from each member who are trying to get their own kind of information out of some of the witnesses.
And then therefore the strategic line and sometimes the depth of information
can get lost.
Yes. But the other thing I was going to say, which I think I value though, still in the ad hoc committee, is that there is a crossover effect because these things are happening contemporaneously. And what we saw with Brown, was it Brown? Or one of the witnesses, it may have been Brown, right? Because Brown had been to Parliament at that point.
Yes.
Brown had been to Parliament, right? And then he was asked in the Matlala Commission about a statement that he had made in Parliament. Was it Brown? Somebody was asked about a statement that they had made. Brown, I think, was asked about something that he had mentioned on TV. But somebody else was asked about something that they had mentioned in the ad hoc committee. I'm not committing to Brown as the witness I have in mind for this particular example. But that crossover helps. And you could tell that, okay, Advocate Chaskalson has been following what has been happening over there to the extent that he's then able to bring up and say, okay, this was presented in the ad hoc committee. Can you then speak to it over here in the Matlala Commission? I thought that was something that posed value and will continue to pose value, and vice versa, right? Because now, whatever version, let's say, Vusi Matlala presents, I don't think they will get Matlala necessarily but they may still, I'm not sure, because he's awaiting trial. And there's a lot of dynamics with the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, which don't exist necessarily with an ad hoc committee to repeat that same, trip to Hosi Mampuru. But in any event, let's say it's Shadrach Sibia. The information that he presented within the ad hoc committee can still be tested, again within
the Matlanga Commission,
and I think that's valuable. So I think there's a synergy there that I don't want to downplay, but I do think that when it comes to proof, hard proof, we've seen concrete evidence being presented within the Matlanga Commission, whereas we haven't always seen concrete evidence. But another additional element, which I think is interesting, because of the parliamentary privileges that exist, we've heard more about interesting characters who then can feel our understanding of the story. So the Paulo Sullivans.
Yes, indeed.
They get mentioned by Kabinde, and we hear about several other people as well. We get Patlane, maybe even the role of the media in working with certain figures. You've got Robert McBride.
There is more that is being aired out that is of interest within the space, within the nature of the ad hoc committee, where there is not much room for that within the...
Yes, I think...
the Matlanga Commission.
Yes, because of the political nature, we've kind of allowed for more context and background within the ad hoc committee, whereas there was a little bit of discussion around context and background in Kwanazi's and Fanny Masemola's testimonies, if you think about Matlanga Commission, but it was not to the extent that you are having it within the ad hoc committee. And it's important to talk about that and to point it out. And I brought some books here. They were in my Woolies bag, but I put the Woolies bag aside.
So we don't want to cast any doubts as to the nature of the space.
Exactly. So, for instance, you've got this book here.
Okay, what am I looking at?
This is Killing Cable. This is a 2011 book. Let me just check when it was published, by Mandy Wiener, right? She now works for ENCA, I think, or EWN. So this is a 2011 or so book. Let me just check. Give me a sec. Where do they usually put that? Right. That information is usually on page 1, right?
Yeah, the first one.
Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. 2011. I was right. So in this book, there's the discussion around the murder of Brett Kebble and also the underworld relationships with senior police officials and politicians. So it's a Mandy Wiener book, Killing Kebble. And what you'll find there is that some of the things that we are discussing now actually have their roots in this. So for instance, there is this intersection between private security companies and drug trade. And you'll find here that one of the guys, or some of the guys who ended up killing Brett Kebble, were actually in a private security company, right? That's how people access guns legally, and that's how they then create this cabal, which can then work in terms of enforcement and intimidation, but under a legal guise.
Yes.
And then you find that these private security companies were then providing security at nightclubs, and then they would then create monopolies in the provision of that private security at the nightclub. So the bouncers, as well as the private security companies, would intersect. And then that's where you now, back then, the big clubs were the rave clubs, and that was most of what was dominating the northern parts of Johannesburg. And now we have big Amapiano clubs and, more black middle class facing clubs. So the script is the same. The modus operandi is the same, but the faces have changed, right? And then you will then hear in that same book, Glenn Agliotti being mentioned. And then you start to connect not only the security companies, the bouncers, the drugs that are being sold in the nightclubs, but now you start to see politicians connecting with senior police officials. And then all of that then paints a picture where you have Brett Kebble, Roger Van Kresha, you've got Glenn Agliotti, you've got Jackie Celebi, you've got security companies. It's a pattern.
And it's one big criminal conglomerate.
Yes. But can you see the different departments of the conglomerate? Security company, police officials, politicians, business people,
drugs,
nightclubs. So you see why now DJs are actually being shot and all of those things. So I think the importance of this also is that post this, or in the middle of this, you start to get characters like Paulo Sullivan emerging. You start to get characters like, what's his name? This advocate, Harry Nell, because he was one of the prosecutors in the case under the Scorpions, I think. Even Andrea Johnson, she was working on the team with him. So some of the prominent names that are now showing up, Robert McBride, Matthew Siseko, all of these names that we've been hearing about,
were present during this time.
And this is actually their origin story, if you will. So this
is where they rise up.
Yes, exactly. And this is where a book of this nature gives texture. So what's happening now in the ad hoc committee is that they've also been able to explore that backstory, right? And there may be political motivations for doing that. Different parties have got different reasons for asking certain questions, right? The EFF will ask certain questions for their own political motives. MK will ask for their own political motives. But the public is still getting a perspective, right? So when questions are asked by MK about Paulo Sullivan, right, we then get an understanding into the role that he plays. And there's another book that came out. This one was written by Mary and Tam. And
before we move on, though, I think it is an interesting point of bringing up Paulo Sullivan.
Yes.
Because I think one of the main things that everyone has been asking, he's been platformed quite a bit in making comments around Nkwanazi, around the processes. And then, obviously, as someone who, when Kambide was testifying, and then he comes and says, I've received an SMS threatening. But I mean, that has been his nature in the past few years. I think even in the Portfolio Committee on Police in 2018 received threatening messages from Paul O'Sullivan again when they were investigating a particular matter. So, but everyone keeps asking, who is he?
Yes.
And why does he have so much power? Why does he have access to EPID, to NPA, to the SAPS, but we still don't know who he is. And he's still bright shining in media platforms, and they're platforming and taking his opinions.
Yes.
But we don't know who he is. What is his position?
So this is a good question, which is exactly why I found this book, right? So this book here is called To Catch a Cop. So listen, Mandy Winner does discuss Paulo Sullivan also extensively in her book, right? This book here was written by Marianne Tam. She, I think, now is an editor at Daily Maverick. She's the investigator who went through the trash of the members of parliament of the EFF. So that is her...
We remember her very well.
That is her relationship, or her I think, link to the EFF story.
Yes.
But this book here is called To Catch a Cop, the Paul O'Sullivan story.
Oh, wow. So it's directly about O'Sullivan.
Yes, okay, yes. So she spoke to him.
Okay, what are we getting here?
He gives a version. So interestingly, this book, it's a bit of a frustrating book in that it doesn't fully answer the question that
of
you're
who
asking.
He is.
Yes. But you get some indications. So let me quickly read through this part here. So commissioners, if you'll allow me. Right, she says... O'Sullivan, a trained engineer who described himself as having more than 35 years of experience in the investigation of serious crime, including such offenses as terrorism, human drugs and arms trafficking, money laundering, and other transnational organized crimes, including murder and robbery and fraud, right? That's how he would describe himself. My experience, this is him saying, includes time spent in law enforcement agencies in the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Cyprus, and South Africa. Then she says, he has publicly stated that for 6 years, he worked for the British government in the field of counterterrorism and espionage, and that he is bound by contract with the UK government, never to mention the work that he did for him. So Mandy Winner mentions in the book that he was working with MI6, which is the foreign intelligence arm of the British government, right? And that falls under the Foreign Office. So he was definitely working there. And in as much as he tries to downplay that, I think it's something that is generally conceded and understood that at some point he was in a relationship with MI6 on the basis of this book, Mandy Winner's book. Then here also I picked up something I thought was interesting because it says he first visited South Africa in 1978 on a break from a secret mission doing intelligence work for the United Nations Police Service in what was then Rhodesia.
Oh.
Right? Then I was like, 78 in Rhodesia.
Rhodesia.
What were you doing for the British in Rhodesia in
1978?
Because that was round about the time when the war was ending.
Yes. And things were shifting now towards...
Exactly. So what was your role, in that time? And there was a lot of instability and a lot of funny business that happened because almost there was an attempt to derail the first elections or the period leading up to the first elections. And it says here that he's traveled on the continent widely: Sierra Leone, Libya, Cote d'Ivoire, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, South Africa. So he's clearly a person who has worked within the intelligence space. If you're now trying to formulate a full picture, worked in the intelligence space, somebody who then was doing Foreign Office work in that capacity and then ends up in South Africa. Then he describes in the book to Marianne Tam how he then got to work for the airport. It was Johannesburg International Airport at the time. How he worked also as a police reservist in the early 90s. That's where he met President Ramaphosa, who also was training as a reservist. He was in charge of the reservists. And that explains the famous picture where, he's standing with President Ramaphosa, who was training as a reserve because Paul Sullivan was running the program. And I haven't finished it. I'm still working through it. But that explains some of the dynamics as to the backstory. And then he then provides forensic investigating support to the investigators of the Brett Kebble murder.
Right.
And that's when he becomes a bigger feature within the South African policing service on the Scorpion side, on the intelligence side, and perhaps when he really begins to build a vast network of connections within that fraternity and community. But because he's instrumental in the fall of Jackie Silevi, I think that then creates this legend around him that he is one of the people who was involved in the fall of Czechoslovakia. And he will then say that there are many other people that he has taken down and will continue to take down, as you see the nature of the threats that he makes. But
yes, it is. But so what I'm getting is that you have a former spy. You have a former, allegedly, because
well, according to this book,
I don't want to get threats directly.
So what we've done differently from just conjecture is that there are two journalists here
who are indeed saying that.
So we've given citations. We can even
we are indeed saying that this is a former spy who has worked extensively in different spaces in different African countries and even in Europe.
According to what he told the authors and what they
ascertained. He gets an opportunity as a forensic investigator in a very important national case and begins to use that and his skills around, that he's obviously...
whatever he was trained in.
Yeah, whatever he has been trained in, to create now a network within the police service, within the NPA, within like EPID and other.
Yeah.
And begins to take control in some way or
influence,
form.
Right?
Influence.
Which is a softer word, but still has a material impact on how we understand.
Because from what Kambida is saying is that he was told severally that we should move this way, you should investigate this way. And when he didn't do that, he has been blocked severally by Sullivan from certain positions.
That's what Nkabinde
said.
And
there's been direct threats. But also even his presence himself, Sullivan, he has the presence of someone in charge of something.
Yes.
So who is he working for himself or who is he working for?
Well, they've put him as a witness, right? I think General Mkhwanazi raised some questions around him. We saw obviously his behavior. I must say that both of these books describe him as an abrasive character.
Definitely,
and they describe that he has these mannerisms. So they're not new mannerisms, but because he has been called, we will then have a chance to ascertain some of the questions which are important to take beyond the realm of conjecture or one-sided allegation. And if he does show up to Parliament, then we will then be able to get to the bottom of some of the things that he was saying in various interviews, which have been contradicted or refuted by other entities.
Indeed.
So, for example, he said that he gave Helen Suzman Foundation money, which then helped them to win the Robert McBride case. They then went to the media and said, and issued a statement and said, he's lying. We did not get money from him. Maybe he gave us some information or sat in a few meetings where we were then preparing for the case, right? So if he was giving the foundations money, that's one thing. If he was embellishing his role in terms of his capacities and capabilities, then that's another thing, right? And it speaks to his credibility, his demeanor. All of those things are things that we will have to establish and ascertain.
He has made certain allegations against General Mkhwanazi.
And General Masemola about Louis Vuitton bags. And now he will also have an opportunity to come and prove his version. I don't know if he is going to be called by the Matlala Commission because he's somewhat a tangential.
Yes, not necessarily a central kind of figure in this. But I think, like you said, the ad hoc is more able to bring in other characters that come up and seem significant in order to kind of understand what has been presented more.
Because the moment doesn't fall out of the sky.
Yes.
This moment is a product of multiple moments, the things that we are discussing. And in as much as, even as we're talking about this now, we must remember that in the Western Cape, we've seen similar narratives almost play out. A senior cop was killed a few years ago from the anti-gang unit when he was getting close, as he said, to breaking through with a variety of cartels and people there. We've seen people like Modak getting arrested, Stainfield getting arrested. We've also seen some gangs being implicated in intimidation through a security company, where they were going on Long Street and collecting monies. All of this is to say, none of this happens in a vacuum, and characters such as Paulo Sullivan can then help us to understand that critical period, basically between 2010 up until maybe when General Fani Masemola comes in, because there's still policing that needs to be understood, because even this political killings task team, which is the center of these fact-finding commissions and committees, was put in place in 2018. So we do need that backdrop. We do need that context. And it looks as if that is going to come more from the parliament side as opposed to.
Whereas, I mean, the minister for our currently suspended minister of police, Senzo, has testified both now, I think at this point.
Yes.
Adok and Matlala. And, obviously he has been asked about the disbandment of the political killings task team. And he, in Adok, he said that he felt like it was ineffective and made the order on the 31st of December 2024 to disband it, and does imply that he had spoken to the president about it, and that the president, I don't know if he affirmed that the president agreed, or he agreed that he had consulted with the president around this. And then now we are seeing him at Matlala, where he has now come to say that there was a work study and they came up with a new organogram in 2019, where already that did not include the political killings task team because he did not feel like it was going to be as effective as just absorbing those services into existing systems. What do you make of this new organogram and what he's now implying?
Okay, so at the time of our recording, his testimony is still ongoing. So
yes,
that's going to affect some of our reflection as things stand. But what I'll say is there are certain arguments that he has made, which I think the ship has sailed on. For instance, he has made the argument that, there were no more political killings, or that they were going down, or something to that effect, making it seem as if there's no longer a necessity for the task team, And I have a friend from gym. His name is Abdul. He's a very fit guy, right? And he has almost no body fat, right? Abdul from my gym. Now, it would be hilarious or bizarre for me to then say he does not need to work out because he is fit, right? He is fit because he works out. And that is the relationship between the fitness and the working out. So if political killings have gone down somewhat in the presence of a political killings task team, that is proof that the political killings task team is reducing those killings, but not that the phenomena of the killings or the attempts to murder has gone down, right? It just means that there's an effective deterrent. So if you take the deterrent away, that could then have the unintended consequence of bringing back the same behavior that you say you don't want. So that's on level one, right? The argument that it's not necessary because look, the numbers have gone down.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two is the efficacy or the qualitative or quantitative performance of the task team. He made it seem as if this task team is not doing well, right? Or that seems to be a version of the argument made by people who have been supporting his theory of the case. But from multiple witnesses, we've heard that the task team was doing well and was doing much better than other teams, even when it comes to investigatorial steps. They would say, okay, we got these ballistics turned around within a day, within 2 days, whereas it would typically take 30 days, right? Because they were trying to troubleshoot bottlenecks in the system and say, why are we getting ballistics so slowly when we may need this ballistics relatively fast? So we're able to see that the political killings task team, in using that multidisciplinary approach and using skills and competences from different departments in the police within the team, was then able to operate much faster, much more effectively. So we hear from multiple witnesses that no, the task team is doing well, whether it's the chief financial officer, whether it's Sentumule, several people have said, look, that task team was doing well. And that undercuts the narrative that it was not doing well. Then we also have to consider the argument about the budget, where we've been told that, listen, certain police officers, don't have this particular thing or that particular thing. Then here you have this task team, which is living in hotels and all of that. So I think the comparison was not apples to apples and a little bit disingenuous for him to do, because he should have compared with comparable task teams, right? To say
not necessarily with ordinary members of the police service.
Exactly, working maybe at Brixton Police Station or whatever. That's a difference. that I think in role, function, and expectation. So if he had compared with Operation Valumkoti or the operation which is happening in Cape Town, that would have been apples and apples, right? Or if he had compared internationally with how does the FBI do it, or how do other investigative teams do it around the world, and then do cost for cost. Obviously,
Yes.
even comparing regionally, that would have made more sense. But what we then hear from the chief financial officer is that certain amount of money was spent to prevent the EFF protest from being successful,
Yes.
or whatever was calculated when that was done. I think it was
360 million.
360 million. So we already know that a one-day protest can have these kind of resources thrown at it. But also we know that Operation Valumkoti has 1.1 billion spent on it without the same commensurate effectiveness that we've seen from the PKTT.
Or strategic movement, or like...
Yes, I would agree with that as well as an input. So if you then were to then say, okay, so who's value for money here? Is it PKTT, or is it Operation Valumkoti, or is it, counter EFF protest funding, or whatever you want to call that? I think a lot of people would say it looks as if the PKTT is actually value for money. So then that does away with one of the arguments which was being made, that, listen, we need to do away with this because there's no money, right? In fact, if he had actually made a similar argument to the argument that Begitele was making, to say, look, maybe fund it from Kara, right? But don't necessarily do away with it. Now, when I listen to all of the information that has been presented about the political killings task team, my thinking is that, okay, political killings are a specific type of killing. I don't consider them to be just a serious and violent crime that can be dealt with the murder department. I view them as the same way I would view commercial crime, whereas you can't deal with it from a normal police station. It has to be dealt with from a particular space and place with the capacities that are necessary. It's a form of organized crime that is happening because it is linked with contestations for tenders and links to very powerful people who may obstruct justice. So I do think that it needs to be dealt with by a dedicated team. So if we say the PKTT is working well, my thinking would be, if it's working well, broaden its mandate using its formula, using its formulation. And maybe it then works in conjunction with crime intelligence.
Indeed.
And then you then are able to deal with the political killings task team, with the political killings, municipal related killings. But I don't think saying, let's put it in serious and violent crime is the solution.
No.
Then there's the question also of, is the serious and violent crime unit as it's currently constituted and led the right address for such an effective team? Because sometimes the leader of an entity can also affect the results. So I don't know if General Shadrack Sibia has discharged himself as somebody who really can be a custodian at this particular point of this, based on the allegations we've seen around him and some of the leadership issues that have been raised around his leadership style. And I think those are valid questions for us to ask ourselves at this particular point. So going back to the minister's theory of the case, it therefore seems to me that we can't necessarily accept that it's not working. We can't necessarily accept that it's expensive, and we can't necessarily accept that it should just be, put under the serious and violent crime as per an organogram. I think the argument that exists is either it continues in its formulation, or that formulation gets crystallized, but not necessarily to fall under something, but maybe to be a standalone. That's what I would do. I would give them more money. I would give General Kumalo more money. I would give General Konazi more money, because if they can do all of this with the 430 or 60 something million
that they had for that period of time,
yes,
as well.
for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
How much more can they do if they were given 2 billion?
Yes.
Which is double what Valumkoti has, right? Then perhaps we would have less cartels.
And also figuring out the extent of the work that they eventually start doing as a political killings task team, to realize that everything is connected. It's connected to the drug cartels, it's connected to many other, like you said, even private security. There are so many connections within that are driving political killings, that the scope of what they actually now have to cover is actually larger than what they probably initially began with and started with. And that might be something to consider in terms of funding and expanding the team.
Yeah. And I think I call it hosh curry behavior, right? The extent of the hosh curry behavior is such that a lot of the people who are participating in it are interconnected with various industries. If you think about Vusi Matlala,
Yes.
who we've been hearing a lot about, right? He is doing what is it called? Medicare 24 Tshwane District,
Yes.
which is working with Ekurhuleni Metro Police, which is working with SAPS, and also occupying or trying to get into government tenders there. But the same individual has another company, Black AK Trading, which is doing tenders at Tembisa Hospital, right? And the same individual seems to be operating and working with people to organize hits, right?
Yes.
Which is why he's facing these charges. And one of them seems to be related to disputes within the nightclub and drug industry,
Yes.
but another one seems to be related to disputes within the taxi industry because he was working for Msibi and he says, not he says, but Msibi had or has a rivalry with Joe Sibanyoni, who is another taxi owner, leader, prominent figure there. And one of the attempted murder charges is for the attempted murder of Joe Sibanyoni.
Yes.
So you've got one guy whose hosh curry behavior is
so extensive. It's so extensive. And within different criminal industries as well as different governmental industries.
Yes. And I must say this, the other side of it, why they would need more resources, because it seems that there are bigger fish in this ocean. One of my biggest regrets watching the Kosi Mampuru questioning. Number one, I did like some of the, talk to Jerry's mom, psychology, but
to soften him or maybe make him feel humanized enough to share more.
But can I say this in your house? Can I say this in your house?
Okay, yes, you're welcome to.
I would have liked shouting Julius on the day.
Okay.
If ever there's a day when I would have liked Julius to go full shouting Julius, the way you were shouting at Kusela Tiko the other day.
Yes.
I needed at least let Leanne be good cop.
Good cop, and then he needed to be bad cop.
No, just go
shouting.
Classic Julius, like classic Malema. That's just, I needed a bastard type of Julius. Remember that moment? So a bloody agent.
Yes.
I needed.
I get it though, but do you know? I think my feeling, and I think a lot of people's feelings around Kat's testimony is that we expected a criminal. We understand he's a criminal.
Yeah.
So it's a given. I think the infuriating people, the people who are incredibly infuriating, are people like Sbia, are people like Nkuna, are people like Julius Mkwanazi, Imogen.
Fair.
Are people who are discharged to serve. And then when you figure out that they're the ones actually leading the crime, there is that, I think, more.
I get that
so
part.
I think a lot of people, and I think it wasn't just a thing that affected Julius only, because I think across social media, people were like, but Kate Wabantu,
And I got it. And I thought part of it was him playing the PR game.
Yes.
Coming in well-dressed, trying to be very soft, very demure, if you remember that whole trend. But so you're right. I would have been very annoyed by Imogen if I was giving her questions. And I think you could tell Advocate Matlala Sepo.
She was done with her.
She was done with her at a certain point. She was trying her best to stay professional, but at some point you could tell that she's done. So yes, Imogen Mashazi was annoying and frustrating, right? But the conduct of Vusi prior to him even entering into the room would have dictated for me to throw some curveballs at him. There's this movie, it's A Few Good Men, I think it is. If you remember the scene where the guy is like, we want the truth. And the guy loses his cool. You can't handle the truth. You don't know what it takes for me to
run this. It's a military navy.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And in that moment, because everything else up until that point had not led to anything revelatory, but it was getting under his skin, showing his true colors that then led to the understanding of what had happened to that officer who had passed away. And I thought, as a litigation technique, that should have been tried a few times.
Understand.
Get under his skin. Because when he's out and about doing these things that he's accused of doing, is he demure, very relaxed, or
is there a side of him that actually is?
And that's the side
that we needed to see.
Because then we needed to see the real monster and not the monster. It's like a pit bull. If you have no knowledge of the dog and you just see it, you may not assume that it is lethal.
Yes.
Right? But once you see it in action, then you get to understand exactly why it is one of the most feared dogs, right? So, I mean, that's just a side comment. The real worry I had is that we didn't get to the bottom of the Hanguani Maumela question.
Yes, actually, you are the first person who's actually brought this up.
No. I don't want Hanguani to feel like I'm the first. The first person was Jeff Wicks. So if anybody's calling or visiting anybody, it's Jeff Wicks. Jeff.
Okay, let's go into the Hanguani, because I think it has gotten lost. I mean, I think it's something that the press did not even press Ramaphosa on, and we kept mentioning that. And I think it's just kind of gotten lost along the way.
Because there's a lot of detail. But Advocate Chaskasan asked an interesting question to Brown Mulaudzi. And I don't think it's really for Brown, but I think it helped us understand what they have in their possession as the commission. He says to him, listen, why is Hanguani Maumela exchanging text messages with Vusi Matlala about Medicare 24? He has no role in this company, ostensibly.
No, because Medicare 24 is a different tender to what Hanguani was involved in, which is Tembisa Hospital.
Yes. But Advocate Chaskasan says he's got messages where he says Vusi Matlala is reporting every payment to Hanguani Maumela, which means one of two things. Either Hanguani Maumela is a partner in the Medicare 24 Tshwane district, which Vusi Matlala says is the 100% owner of. And we already know that they had a prior business relationship because they were both directors of CAT VIP in 2017. Yes. But either they are partners or Hanguani is actually the principal.
Leader.
Yes, and that's why he is reporting the payments. And maybe that's why he never had enough money to pay everybody on time. And had to claim,
he actually did not, all that money was not his.
And then he had to claim that his F&B green screen is frozen. He's like, no, my F&B, look, you see my F&B.
Oh my word. If there's a person who was busy, everybody was on that man for money every day.
I need money for rent to focus. Need to focus, please, man.
Please, man. I'm sorry. I know I haven't delivered, but it's coming. The time is coming.
I'm a bit distracted. Can you just send me a young 10,000 so that my focus level?
Even Kale was there. Julius was there. Julius Nkwanezi. You have to say the whole name. We've established. Julius Nkwanezi is there. He had finally admitted that yesterday and today that he has received money from CAT, and it's 20,000.
And they got him in a beautiful way. I loved it because he thought that they were talking about somebody else. He didn't realize that they had the bank records. When they showed him the records, the man was like, okay. I don't even have legal representation. I can't even have somebody object. Then they're like, okay, explain. He's like, no, he helped me. And he even helped me more than this.
More than this.
I'm like, what are you doing? You're thinking...
He's like, I think at that point he's like, hey, let's just let it come out.
But the point I wanted to make about this before we lose it in total is that, one, I mean, I do think that they could have asked more questions around who is Hanguani, what's your relationship? Tell us as much as you know. Not necessarily just the relationship with the president, whether we take his version or not, that's one thing. The other thing is that we really need to understand this individual's role within the tender system in South Africa, his modus operandi, whether he also has other business partners, because his mother is part of the trust. She used to work at the Limpopo Department of Health. We don't know. But where we started was the PKTT needs more money. Yeah. Because they're dealing with such a sophisticated network and we haven't even scratched the surface
of it.
Because Vusi is not the apex person in this whole thing. He is possibly a low-ranking member of a cartel. And I do think there is a cartel. I don't think it's the only cartel, but I do think that we can see that there is some synchronized and coordinated stuff being done here.
And criminality that is happening in tandem. Yes. And in connection to each other.
So that's an argument for more PKTT, not less PKTT. And I'm curious, and I, as I said, we're recording this as the commission is having the conversations. I'm curious as to how Brown Mulaudzi ends up messaging Vusi Matlala early in December last year. Because it was after the raids, if you remember, on the raid at Katiso Molefe's mansion, where certain people were sushi sushi guys were found there, and not on that day, but another day. And then there was the raid on Vusi Matlala's house as well, right?
Yes.
And after that, Vusi Matlala says Brown reaches out to him and says he's got a message from the minister or whatever, which is seeking to discuss whatever he said, his harassment or by the GCI ops or the PKTT. I'm interested to hear how is the minister going to explain this away? Because that is where his name starts featuring.
Exactly.
Up until that point, we're just discussing these interesting criminal underworld figures. But at the point at which the developments play out in December, we now start getting to the point where we have to start asking, well, Brown now reaches out to this guy saying he's doing it on your behalf or at your instruction. And then a few weeks later, the political killings task team is removed for reasons which don't seem compelling. And then a few days later, CBA is trying to get his hands on dockets. And then we then see everything that plays out, which leads to what I call Fiasco Sunday, the 6th of July, where General Mkhwanazi says,
yes.
I'm left with no choice effectively than to come and share with the public. And I think just because we're almost out of time, I think, right? I want to say something about that day, the 6th,
Yes.
which I think is important to just point out because everyone was talking, particularly Paulo Sullivan, you know, like, why is he wearing the uniform? Others spoke about procedure on the day. Number one, I think it was a morally just decision because he had already tried to raise these issues within the system. And I also think that sometimes people use protocol to frustrate you when you are raising a legitimate issue, especially when they know that they can slow the system down. You know, it's like if you were to raise an HR complaint in Bad Boy Records about P. Diddy, and then you are told that you have to follow protocol as opposed to going to the media the way Cassie did, you are not necessarily going to get redress because he is Bad Boy and he will frustrate you.
And Cassie went to the media, and within 24 hours, there was a settlement.
And now we've actually uncovered the full extent of all the baby oil shenanigans that Diddy was part of, right? So point I'm making is he had to do that, and it was important that he did it that way because it led to the outcomes that we are now seeing. Indeed. We would not have known about all of these things. We would not have gotten this crash course about the South African Police Service, IPID, all of these other entities, but for that action. But secondly, something that he did, which I think will have a more lasting effect than just the current ad hoc committee and the commission, is this. He has returned to many police officers the pride and integrity of being a police officer. If you think about public perceptions of police officers in May of 2025, you may have found that very few people look at them with honor and respect. And if a child were to say, I want to be a police officer, many people would say, why? But now if a child says they want to be a police officer, you know they want to be General Dumisani Kumalo. You know they want to be General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. And to have a law enforcement body corporate, which is proud and eager to stand up and be counted as fighting cartels, violent criminals in the way that, warrant officer, is it Nkosi, witness A, witness B, witness C, witness D. There are many just normal everyday warrant officers who now wake up in the morning in Mkhwanazi mode, who now wake up playing Tupac so that the characters who don't like Tupac's implications can be scared of that, right? But last thing I would say is that it seems to me that the police are chronically underfunded. And we have to talk about that and think about that. And this is perhaps where...
And perhaps that it has an effect then on the nature of their policing, but also their susceptibility.
Yes, because you guys are a political formation, and I'm hoping that the MPs who within the party will watch the podcast and maybe even other members of parliament, right? If you think about Julius Mkhwanazi, dubious Julius, right? And what he was admitting to today, he said, I had challenges. I want to pay my kids' school fees. I want to do this other thing. Let's assume that to a degree in his heart, he really felt like, I'm trying to give my kid a good education. And now I have to start cutting corners. And that may have been how he ended up being ultimately corrupted, right? Because I think somebody told me that entry-level police officer makes 15,000 rands a month. And I think that's insufficient. It may very well be that we need to make sure that entry-level police officers are very well paid to make the incentives for taking bribes and working with cartel leaders and all of that unattractive. Kat Matlala was saying that he was paying these well-trained task team guys 100,000 a month, and they're making significantly less in the army and in the police service. That therefore means you will go and work for these security companies and maybe get compromised in that respect, right? So when you think about the cost of crime to South Africa broadly, someone could say the cost of crime is 50 billion a year, right? And maybe it is, because think about how much we pay for private security.
Yes.
Insurance for cell phones, laptops, all of these things. Everyone is living behind a walled garden. And those who cannot afford to get the private security will buy pit bulls and German shepherds and all of that, in the impression that, black people are scared of dogs. So the criminals won't go into the yard. I mean, we all know this.
It's also like, it has the placebo effect of at least
you feel a little bit
safer.
True. But the point I'm making, though, is that if we were to look at the net cost per year
of what we do
of crime, if we had to increase the police budget, let's say by 10 billion, to increase police salaries, increase the headcount of warrant officers, the guys who are on the ground, because we have got 200,000 police officers thereabouts for 62 million, 63 million. Is that enough? I don't think so, right? Change some of the rules around tattoos and all of that so that it can be more inclusive. Actually get some people who may not be physically fit, but can sit at a computer all day
and get some,
do the analysis and all of that. So I think there's ways to capacitate the police
and expand it.
And maybe that's what members of parliament and policymakers should be looking into.
And I think it's a conversation that, we've been trying to have for a long time, in terms of just the under-resourced. It's completely under-resourced. There's not enough.
Yeah.
Even in comparison to the growing private security companies.
Yes.
I think for every one policeman, there's at this point probably like 4 or 5 private security guards, which makes it also quite incredibly difficult for police to actually do.
And those private security guards are working for small slivers of society, right? In those gated communities, they're going up and down a few streets. Very effective, right? And crime in those neighborhoods, some of it has gone to zero. They've had 0 incidents in years. But it's not for the public.
It's not for the public, yes.
It's for private interests. What you need is to make sure that your national level, city level policing is such that
is the most basic that anyone can look forward to and say it's effective and I'm good with this.
And be solid. So I think that's perhaps maybe food for thought that I would leave for people to consider, because if you have somebody who's accused of being a gangster telling you that I'm hiring police officers because I can pay them 100,000 each and have 16 of them driving with me in a convoy up and down as I go and collect bags and give bags.
We have failed. It means we have failed at something.
It means that the funding model needs to be revisited. And I think the way that you revisit it is to compare it with the cost of crime. If there was no crime or low levels of crime, what would be the tourism revenue? What are the positive externalities of increasing?
And even participation in the economy. People are not able to leave their houses after 6 p.m.
Yes.
Which means their lives are limited to a large degree, which means they're not engaging in spaces and buying and, people spending that much on security also means they have less disposable income. By the time I've finished paying the alarm, the whatever, I have less money to actually even participate and do anything recreational. So there is a limiting, and I think even a limiting of the growth of our own economy, simply because of the cost of crime.
If every day and every place was as safe as G20, the leader summit,
oh wow,
then the economy would be totally transformed.
It would. Like, can you imagine the freedom that comes with that? The freedom that would come with just basic safety in a country, and how much that would change the dynamic, how much people can open later, how much transport can keep moving around later and later and at any time, and just how much movement and freedom that could actually give people, which is supposed to be the basic thing.
Yeah, so it's a justifiable
is, definitely.
revisiting, and maybe there needs to be some pressure, some direction, some kind of policy and research exploration to say, not just to the EFF, but this is EFF podcast, Mr. Malema, all of the other guys, what are you going to push for to make sure that these specialized teams are adequately funded, but also that the police get a bigger budget, because now we know if the right teams get the right money,
changes
empires
happen.
fall.
Yes. And I think one of the main things, I think, in pushing for this ad hoc committee was, how do we regain the public's trust
Absolutely.
in the policing systems in South Africa? And that was one of the main pushes for the EFF to say something needs to be done through these inquiries. And I think that's an important element of what you're speaking about. That if people, if these effective policing networks and task teams, whatever is put together, are effectively capacitated, then we can also, like you said, begin to feel more safe, and we also begin to have more trust in our police systems, and even police themselves begin to feel like they have room to actually do their work the right way. And we can have a transformative system that can actually change the way our society functions, because right now it's dead. It's been dead.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you guys in continuing championing this journey, and hopefully when the ad hoc recommences, certain individuals will be shouted at, because there's witnesses who are coming
I think he's getting the message now that some people deserve shouting.
There's like a few witnesses that I can think of who are coming up where I'm like, I hope we get classic Julius.
Classic Julius
for them.
Okay. I definitely think that. I don't think that's dead yet. However, thank you also for joining us, and good luck. I think the work you're doing in terms of analysis and just providing people with the adequate attention paid to what is happening is very, very important, because a lot of people don't have time. But also you do it very meticulously and very consistently.
And I add a few jokes, and some people don't get, why am I adding jokes? We have to make it accessible.
I think it is very important, and we've laughed quite a bit here, which is actually good, because
these are heavy topics, but we mustn't lose our sense of humor.
Definitely, and I think one thing South Africans are good at is just not losing their sense of humor. So good luck with that. We look forward to listening to more of what you're talking about, and unpacking the ad hoc and the commission, and check him out, please. If you're not, I think everyone is following by now.
Hopefully,
but if you're not,
please subscribe. It's horse curry behavior not to subscribe.
Mighty Jamie, please follow him on YouTube. He does incredible analysis of our political situation here in South Africa.
And you see, when you're not panicking, you don't have to drink 3 liters of water like Julius. Water's not necessary.
It's not necessary. Julius was sweating. Like,
that man drank the River Jordan. I don't know what was going on.
I think he should have just committed to truth, maybe that way, because it looks like hell is...
He must still sing. He's got a chance. Juju, the other Juju, shady Juju.
He must sing, because right now he's in hell. That's why he's drinking all that. Like,
pull in a gel on these guys. You said you don't want to go to prison, leave your children. This is the time to sing.
Do it now.
Call Chaskausen. Call the commission and say, I'm ready.
He's ready?
I'm ready to sing.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
Pleasure.